Hello, my name is Keith, and these are my stamps. This is episode 12, Andorra. The Principality of Andorra is in the Eastern Pyrenees in southwest Europe, bordered by France to the north and Spain to the south. It's 468 square kilometers, that's 181 square miles, and it's the 16th smallest country by land in the world. It's half the size of Dallas, or slightly larger than the Isle of Wight, with a population of 87,500, which is roughly the population of Chester in England, or the city of Indio in California, if that helps you at all. The capital, Andorra la Vella, is at an elevation of over 1,000 meters. That's 3,350 feet. And although the Vella part means old in Catalan, it actually comes from the same root as the French ville and the Catalan villa, meaning city. For Andorra itself, the meaning is unknown. There are four main hypotheses. The first, there was an Iberian pre-Roman tribe called the Andalusians in the area of present-day Andorra, who faced off against the Carthaginian army again in the Punic Wars. The Andalusian may come from the Basque word for big or giant. The second hypothesis, it's derived from a different Basque word, Anora, using the root word meaning water. A third variation is it comes from the Arabic ad-dara, meaning vast land located in the mountains. I'm not sure how vast it is, but it's definitely in the mountains. The fourth of these hypotheses is from an Aragonese word, andurial, meaning land covered with bushes. My information for the history of Andorra comes from the official government website and from another website called Andorra Mania. I'll put the links for both. In 220 BC, the Romans and the Carthaginians were fighting to control the Iberian Peninsula, passing through where present-day Andorra is, and from this, that's one of the hypotheses of the name Andorra comes. In 414, the Visigoths took over the area. 711, there was a Muslim invasion of the Iberian Peninsula, leading to Al-Andalus, and most of the present-day Iberian Peninsula was occupied. Andorra was part of the Spanish March. This was a buffer zone between the Muslim area and the area controlled by Charlemagne. The area of Andorra was actually under the control of the Count of Urgell, Urgell being a county in the Principality of Catalonia and loyal to Charlemagne and his dynasty. In 788, Charlemagne granted a charter to the Andorran people in recognition of their fight against the Muslims. And this is seen as historically the start of the country. In 988, the reigning Count of Urgell gave Andorra to the Diocese of Urgell, leaving it under the control of the bishop. In 1095, the Bishop of Urgell asked for military protection for Andorra, which eventually, a couple of centuries later, led to the bishop sharing the rule of Andorra with the Count of Foix. Foix is a county in southern France. By 1479, the Count of Foix, Francis, he became the King of Navarre, and so Andorra was then jointly ruled by the Bishop of Urgell and the King of Navarre, until the late 1500s, when Henry III of Navarre became Henry IV of France, and in 1607, King Henry IV of France established that the co-princes of Andorra would be the Bishop of Urgell and the head of the French state, which is still the case now. Andorra, geographically isolated but also politically, usually in any international matters has sided with Catalonia. In 1933, there was a what's known as the Andorran Revolution, which, among other things, led to universal male suffrage. Previously, only the heads of households could vote. It also led to an attempt by a member of the Belarusian lower nobility, Boris Mikhailovich Soskriev, to name himself King Boris I of Andorra. He did have some support within Andorra, but his reign only lasted a few days before the Bishop of Urgell asked the Spanish authorities to intervene, which they did, and they removed him. In the late 20th century, Andorra started to modernise. Their first prime minister was elected in 1982. In 1993, Andorran constitution was adopted and entry into the United Nations. In 2002, Andorra unilaterally replaced the French franc and the Spanish peseta with the euro, and this was finally formalised with the EU in 2011, even though Andorra is not in the EU. The stamp issuing history, it's a little unusual because of the dual administration. It has meant that Andorra has had two postal administrations, France and Spain. And Andorra itself does not produce its own stamps. Each of these different administrations produces stamps on Andorra's behalf. For the French side, the French Postal Administration, they started in 1931 with stamps of France overprinted Andorra. In 1932, stamps were produced inscribed the Vallées d'Andorre, the valleys of Andorra. In 1944, Andorra itself was just inscribed. 1975, both Andorra in French and Andorra in Catalan. And finally, in 1978, the official name of the country in Catalan, Principat d'Andorra, the Principality of Andorra, was inscribed on the stamps. The Spanish postal administration began slightly earlier in 1928 with stamps of Spain overprinted with Correos Andorra. In 1929, stamps were produced with just Andorra. And in 1979, it began the Principat d'Andorra, Principality of Andorra, on the stamps. Telling the difference is relatively easy. The French ones have Post, the Spanish ones have Correos, and up until 2002, the currency was different. The French currency was used from 1931 to 2002. That's 100 centimes to 1 franc. And the Spanish currency was used on their stamps from 1928 to 2002, 100 centimos to 1 peseta. From 2002, the 100 cents to 1 euro. Now to my stamps of Andorra. And firstly, not a stamp. I have about 5 of these cards in my collection still. I think, like many collectors, I find it difficult to get rid of things. So I have retained this. I think it must have had stamps on at one stage, judging by the marks on there. But it shows the Andorra coat of arms and colours. Nothing much to do with stamps, however. These are some stamps, and this is from the French Postal Administration from the 1931 issue, the first issue of Andorran stamps by the French Postal Service. And it's the typical French stamp, the blanc type that we've seen before in the Andorra Port Said episode and indeed in Algeria. This is overprinted with the French for Andorra, also surcharged with half a centime. So you can see using the French currency. The first French administration series that inscribed the stamps with something to do with Andorra, this is the Valleys of Andorra, from the series between 1932 and 1943. There were about 60 stamps altogether showing views of Andorra. I almost said different views, although you can see there 3 of them are exactly the same. The 1 cent and the 10 cent stamps are from 1932, and the other two from 1942. This is from the first French series that was just inscribed with Andorra, the coat of arms issue from 1944. Here are two postage due stamps. They are exactly the same as was used in France at the time, except of course for the inscription. On the left, it's a 1946, and the right, 1947, called the Corn Sheaf, designed by Pierre Gandon. He designed loads of stamps for many different countries in a career from 1941 to 1983. He was the designer of the Marianne de Gandon stamp that we saw in Algeria. This is from the first series where both French and Catalan was used for Andorra on the French produced stamps. This is from the third series of flowers in 1975. And you can see the word post quite clearly written. Same again here with the Principat d'Andorra inscription. And when the Spanish stamp authority were also inscribing Principat d'Andorra, one of the ways to tell the difference was by looking for the post or correo. This from 1978, it's showing the Tribunal de Visura, which is or was a court of civil, political, and administrative jurisdiction, so called, meaning the court of the view, because rather than the people going to the court came to the people and moved and acted in the place of litigation. Here are a couple of postcards from Andorra. The top one, the picture confirming that Andorra is indeed in the Pyrenees, with 6 pictures of the Pyrenees Mountains. The lower one showing a hotel in the town of Encamp. Tourism, skiing and hiking became the main industry in Andorra. And this postcard from 1980, I imagine the hotel has modernized a little bit since then. The two stamps, close up here. On the right is the older one from 1979, the Europa issue, a French postman in front of the church of Saint Juan de Casselles, which was built in the 11th and 12th centuries. On the left, the coat of arms issue. There were 2 of these types issued with different printers, and it's the printer's name that tells us the date. You can see at the bottom of the stamp ITVF, which indicates that this stamp was printed in 2002 with an initial face value of 46 cents, even though that's not on the stamp. It's using the euros and cents now. The second stamp has Philipost at the bottom, and that was produced in 2010. My most recent stamp from the French administration of Andorra is this one from 2009, and it shows a 70-cent stamp, the first car manufactured by Renault. On to the Spanish administration. This is from the third series that Spain produced for Andorra, calling them national symbols, and it was released from 1948 to 1953. There are 3 Edelweiss stamps. The 2 cents one is from 1951, and the others are from 1953, as is the stamp showing that gentleman, and that gentleman is Councillor Manuel Areni Bons. He was one of the first 23 candidates to be elected in Andorra's first election after their revolution of 1933. Political parties were not legalized until the Constitution of 1993, so all candidates ran as independents, but Areni was known as a socialist candidate. Quite why he, out of the 23 candidates, made it onto a stamp and the other 22 didn't, I do not know. From 1949, this is an express delivery stamp showing a Eurasian red squirrel, I guess well known for being speedy. Now inscribed with the Principat d'Andorra, the same as we saw on the French administrative stamps. This one, however, you can see the Correos and the PTA for peseta. This series from 1979 was the bishops of Urgell, the co-princes of Andorra, and this particular bishop was Père d'Urch. He was the bishop from 1269 to 1293 and the first co-prince with the Count of Foix. And my most recent stamp from the Spanish administration, just like the French one, is this coat of arms one. And just like the French one, there were two almost identical variants of this one. The difference in these ones, however, was whether the pesetas were indicated underneath the value. Here you can see the PTA underneath the number 20. If it is, it's from 1982. If it isn't, it's from 1988. So, my name is Keith, and these are my stamps. Goodbye.